Welcome everyone to the webinar tonight. If you're here to see Superintendent Green talk about the strategic plan for the 2025-2030 time period, you are at the right place. We are really excited and quite honored to have him here. Shanika Moore Brown is here with me tonight, and you know Shanika is president of the North Carolina PTA. So she and I have been collaborating a lot together over the last couple of years, and we're really happy to do this again tonight. We became big fans of Superintendent Green during the election cycle, during the candidates forums, and just hearing the things that he was saying and doing. So we're really very honored. And just for a quick moment, I'd like to say a few things about the background in case you're just meeting Superintendent Green for the first time tonight. He does have an undergraduate degree in political science and economics, and he did get his law degree over at Duke University here in the Triangle. He is really proud to talk about his two grown daughters who all attended public schools and really wonderful young women. Before Mo was elected and to serve, and he started serving in January this year. Before that had spent more than 7 years as the superintendent of the Guilford County school system. And so, you know, this is one of the third largest school systems in North Carolina. And so I think that that is really important. And I think the other experience that Superintendent Green has that really did give him another deeper interaction with our public school system was when he served in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system. He was the general counsel, and later he became the deputy superintendent. So I think you can see that Superintendent Green has deep roots in our educational community, both personally and both professionally. So Superintendent Green, we are honored to have you here. We are eager to hear about this strategic plan. And it couldn't come at a better time as we're waiting on the General Assembly to talk about the budget soon. We're hoping that we can have some things in this plan that we can advocate for to help you meet these goals. So I'm going to turn the program over to Superintendent Green, and then at the end, we will have questions and answers. So if you don't mind holding those until the end, I think we can get through these slides. There's a lot of really great information. You're going to love this slideshow. And I think most of your questions are going to be answered. But we are saving time at the end. And so put your questions in the chat or the question and answer, whatever is the easiest for you to do. And we'll make sure we get a chance to answer those at the end. All right, Superintendent Green, take it away, as they say.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And great to be with you all this evening. Thanks so much for giving me the wonderful opportunity to share about the strategic plan. Hopefully you can see the plan on the screen. If someone will just give me a thumbs up that looks good. Excellent. One thing in that introduction I do want to make a correction on, and that is I do have a son and a daughter. And so I don't want to slight my son. I know Yvonne knew that, but just didn't, in case someone is watching that gets back to him. I don't want it to be misunderstood that I do. I'm
Thank
blessed.
you.
My wife and I
Thank
have been
you
blessed
for
to have
thank
both
you
a
for doing
son
that.
and a
I don't
daughter.
want your wife to get after me either. I was thinking of her and your daughter, but thank you for correcting that.
No worries.
Appreciate it.
No worries. So the strategic plan is entitled Achieving Educational Excellence. It is a plan, as Yvonne mentioned, for the next 5 years to 2030, and it's a plan for North Carolina's public schools. This is a plan that was actually approved unanimously by the State Board of Education last month, so we have that to share as well. As we get into it, there are three major components to the plan. So certainly high academic achievement, character development, and then this third concept of by 2030, North Carolina will have the very best public education system in the entire nation. How did we get to this plan? So when I started in January of 2025, one of the things that I said I was going to do is a listening and learning tour. And so soon after I started, I did embark on that tour. I was able to visit with thousands upon thousands of individuals in a number of different ways, including doing regional sessions across the state. And you can see where I went across the state. I also visited with more than a dozen schools. Actually, also did more than 30 virtual visits with various groups and did many, many more individual or small group conversations as well. We asked 4 questions in those sessions that I had. One would be, what do you like and want to continue with our public schools? What do you see as challenges and potential solutions for our public schools? What are your big ideas for our public schools? And then finally, what commitments are you willing to make on behalf of our public schools? And so, tremendous response that we received, was so overwhelmed by the comments and the energy that we had as we made our way across the state and in those virtual and other small group sessions. Here are just a few pictures of some of my stops along the way. You'll see in this one, I had the wonderful opportunity to spend some time with a person who was an astronaut. You'll also see a picture of a goat. Was able to be on a hub farm in Durham, and that goat is actually named LeBron, as it turns out. You can see some of the crowds as we made our way across the state of North Carolina as well. Some highlights about our public schools that I think are worth lifting up, and there are many more that I could, but it is worth noting that North Carolina has the second highest career and technical education course participation uh, by percentage in the nation. It is a national leader in early colleges. Um, and in fact, one of the early colleges was ranked #1 in the entire country for high schools in 2023 by U.S. News and World Report. Many of them are highly, highly rated. There are 5, we're the top 5 dual language immersion programs in the nation, and we do have the most national board certified teachers in the nation. And those national board certified teachers are ones that do um, extra work in order to become certified, to really become experts in what they do. Now, when I talked about this concept of best in nation, one question that you might be posing is, what does that mean? So there are metrics that we will be looking at to determine how and when we get to best in nation. There's also, I like to tell folks, an atmosphere feel as well. But the best in nation measures that we have include our 4-year cohort graduation rate. And you can see on this slide sort of where we are currently. And I should note that the number that you see, the 86.4, that is the last number that there is then national comparison data with. So that number is actually a few years old, because the most recent data that was released a couple of weeks ago has North Carolina graduation rate at 87.7%. And that's a 4-year cohort graduation rate, i.e., students that started in the 9th grade, how many of them graduate 4 years later? A bit of context, I think, is important around that number. So if you go back 10, 15 years, we would have been in the 70s with those numbers. So we have continued to make significant progress. And in fact, the number that we have this year, 87.7%, is actually the highest in the history of North Carolina's public schools. You can see what our goal is. To be the best, we need to be at around 92%. And you can see the state then that is currently with that data that we have, national data, is West Virginia at 91.2. The next is ACT composite score. So this is a college entrance exam that's given to students across the country. There are about 17 states that actually provide the ACT to the overwhelming majority of their students, 75 plus percent of their students. North Carolina is one of those. And so you can see then of the 17th, we're in 10th place of the 17th. You can see what the ACT score is as an average. And then you can see what our goal for 2030 is. And you also then see the top state in the country. Advanced placement participation, you can see we're already at 15th place with the number of students that take a advanced placement exam while in high school. You can see what our goal is, and that would put us above Washington, D.C. The AP exam performance, so how well students do. And here we're looking at students that score 3, 4, or 5 on the the AP, because that's where many colleges will give college credit to the students for doing that well on the AP exam. You can see where we are. We're in 31st place. You can see what our goal is, and you'll see the top state, if you will. Dual enrollment. So these are students who are enrolled in high school and in college courses as well while in high school. And you can see that our number is a pretty high number at 36% of our students are dually enrolled, meaning that they have taken a college course while still in high school. You can do that through the early colleges or through Career and College Promise and other opportunities like that. We do not have a national number to compare ourselves to, but we certainly want to continue to see increased enrollment. And so we're looking to have that number get to 41%. Career and technical education, both participation. You can see we're actually already in second place in the country. The percentage of our students that are taking a career and technical education course in their K-12 experience. The goal is to get to the first, which would be to top Nebraska. So you see the 42%. Credentials, CTE credentials. So there isn't a national metrics. And so what we thought we would look at is the number of students who are earning industry credentials. So these would be credentials that various industries will say, yes, this is a credential that means something to us as we think about hiring individuals. And so you'll see this is a pretty significant number, and you'll see what our goal is. One of the things that we're also looking at is the National Assessment of Educational Progress. Some call it the Nation's Report Card. There are exams giving every other year to a sample of students in 4th and 8th grade in reading and in math. You'll see where we are with our scale scores, if you will, and where we believe we need to get to be best in nation. So you'll see the 4th and 8th grade reading, and then 4th and 8th grade mathematics. We also, as I mentioned earlier, one of the 3 main components is around character education. There isn't sort of a national measure for character education, so we're thinking about how to create a measure and a goal for ourselves. And then the last best in nation measure is actually one where, again, we're looking at ourselves, recognizing that the nation is going through changes in how many of our students are educated. We want to be sure that more and more students are actually educated through our public education system. And this is one then where if you look in context, if you go back about 5 to 10 years, we were in around 89% of the school eligible students. We're in our public educational system, both in traditional district public schools and charter schools, if you will, public charter schools. And you see that numbers come down to 84. And so that's where we feel like we've got to turn that tide. And the way we do it is certainly to elevate our performance, as well as you'll hear in a few moments, also do things to elevate the way people think and talk about and support our public education system. You'll see the goal then is to be back to that 89% by 2030. There are 8 pillars that will support, if you will, the overall 3 parts of the vision of high academic achievement, character development, and this concept of best in nation, if you will. Underneath each pillar, there are measures, there are focus areas, and then there are actual actions. So there are 110 actions throughout the plan that have launch dates that are specified in the plan as well. Now, not all the actions launch in year one. There will be different actions that will launch at different times over the course of these next 4+ years. So let's go through each of the pillars at a high level, recognizing that we can go much deeper. You can find online at North Carolina Department of Public Instruction a link to the full plan, if you will. But for tonight's purposes, we'll go through them at a fairly high level. You'll see that pillar 1 is preparing each student for whatever's next for them. You see the various focus areas, and then there are a couple of things that I'll just lift up for each pillar as examples of actions, if you will. So with this first action, it's actually one that we launched as school was coming back into session, and that's North Carolina College Connect. This is something where students have direct admission into various colleges and universities, public and private, across North Carolina. Students have to have a 2.8 grade point average to receive. And in fact, about 63,000 of our seniors received a communication indicating that they had already been directly admitted. Obviously, they have to finish out this school year. They have to be enrolled in a 4th mass course and be successful in that. But they don't have to do lots of what, if you recall, what we had to do, or maybe some of you other children may have had to do with regards to applications and getting recommendations and all of that. The colleges have said, we will accept you. This has been a game changer, quite honestly. The report today from my team is we've had over 12,000 of the 63,000 plus students already say, this is where I want to go to college. Can you imagine that sort of change for them, right? And so this is just one of those examples of what we are doing under Pillar 1. Another one that I'll lift up is one that we launched this year as well. We actually launched it a little bit before school started with our Golden Leaf Schools. So this is an initiative that's been funded by the Golden Leaf Foundation with a $25 million grant to be spent over 5 years to help support 15 schools across the state. So this will be rural schools, and these would be what's called Tier 1 and Tier 2, are some of our more economically distressed communities that are getting this infusion of money for these schools in middle school to focus on improving math outcomes. The goal is certainly to improve these schools, but then also to have this be a proof point as when you put that kind of investment in, what can happen across the entire state of North Carolina. And then I also want to lift up another action, and that is that we have indicated we want our students to be prepared for whatever's next. And one way of doing that, as you saw perhaps in those best in measures, is to have our students take and pass an advanced placement course, an exam, or international baccalaureate, or a college and a career and college promise, or something that says they are taking and passing a college level course while still in high school, and not or, and that they also complete a career and technical education course as well. So this, we believe, will then be proof points that these students are, our students are in fact ready for the next. Second pillar is revere public school educators, and you see again the focus areas. Certainly one of the things that we want to do is changing the way we see, care for, and grow our educators. Another thing that we're going to be focused on, in addition to advocating certainly for more resources for our teachers, is one of the things that we heard when we were out listening, particularly from our educators: if you can't give us additional money, can you figure out ways to give us additional time so that they can really work on their craft and be more support of their students. And so we'll be doing some strategies to help achieve that as well. Pillar 3 is engaging parent and caregiver and community support. And there you see the focus areas there. One example is we're going to create a virtual family academy. So districts across the state, and even some of our charter schools, will have family academies where it's a way of helping to educate parents and other caregivers on various issues related to education so that they can be even better educators for their children. What we want to do is do that at a statewide level, providing lots of additional resources that can be accessed both at the state level, but also pushed out to public school units across the state as well. These would be curated things that we feel comfortable that this will be really beneficial to parents. So everything from how to help your children with reading, for example, to things that you should be aware of as students might be going into middle school and high school, things like career development plans and how you can work with students so they can be thinking about what careers they might be interested in middle and going into high school as examples. Pillar 4 is ensure healthy, safe, and secure learning environments. You see the focus areas there. Something, again, that we started this year is we actually had worked with the General Assembly to actually limit the access to mobile devices and other wireless devices of students while they are in during the instructional day, right? And so one of the things that we have learned is we pushed out a lot of technology over the last couple of decades and allowed a lot of access to devices, and students, I think, got very distracted. And so we have pulled back, and there's legislation to support that pulling back now. And the early returns, quite honestly, have been overwhelmingly positive. Educators are saying, I get to see my students' eyes again. They're now back engaged in what we're trying to teach them. And actually, as I visited with students, they've had a positive reaction to this as well. Pillar 5 is optimize operational excellence, and you see the examples there. Of the focus areas, a couple of examples, or an example is the implementation of Infinite Campus, which is something we launched again with the start of this school year. and that is a new student information system that's putting more information in the hands of our parents so that they can know what's going on in our schools and know what's going on with their particular children as well. Again, what we've heard, early returns, if this has been well received by parents as well, particularly as they've been able to access information on their mobile devices. Pillar 6 is lead transformative change. And here you see the focus areas again for this pillar. There are a couple of things that we'll lift up. One is this Innovative Leadership Council. So, one of the things that we're going to be doing is bringing together various of our public school units. So the way that we have operated, even though we have district public schools and public charter schools, those have essentially operated independent of each other, except when there needs to be money paid through the district public school system to our charter schools. There are lessons that we can learn from both that both ought to learn. And so this is a way for us to bring some group folks together and to share in ways that will then be beneficial to all of our public schools. And then the second is we certainly want to leverage artificial intelligence, certainly in the classroom, but also in other ways as well. And so there will be an action that will be built around utilizing AI in beneficial ways. We also need to be sure we're keeping an eye on ethical use of AI and teaching that to our young folks as well. Pillar 7 is celebrate the excellence in public education. You see the various focus areas there. And one of the things that we'll be doing is there's going to be a significant program, if you will, around having a movement related to champions of public education. So more to come on that, but we know that part of what we've got to do is change narratives. And as I went around the state, there are many folks that want to lean in and be supportive of our public schools. Even if, as there are more options for parents to choose, we've got to be sure that folks understand that there is lots of good going on in our public schools, even as we work on various challenges as well. And so those champions that we'll be developing will be part of helping us spread the good news about our public schools as well. And then the last pillar, galvanizing champions to fully invest in our and support public education. You'll see focus areas here and just one example of what we'll be doing in this regard. And again, many actions, but one that I wanted to lift up is something we're calling the 10 Million Books Campaign. So we'll want to have, over the course of a year, our students read a total of 10 million books. So we have about 1.5 million students in our public education system in here in North Carolina. We want them to be engaged in this way, right? So certainly an educational component, but this is a way to get lots of other folks involved. So our schools absolutely will be involved, but we'll be connecting with our North Carolina public libraries. We'll be connecting with book stores as well to help sort of have more folks focus on this goal, which has this is one of the ways of galvanizing folks to fully appreciate and be supportive of our public schools. So I'll ask that question. Certainly, are you ready to take action? You can certainly sign up. You can utilize this QR code to do so, or go to the website link that's noted there. There are a number of different ways that folks will ultimately be able to be involved. You can be what we call a champion, an advocate, if you will, all the way to being someone who will be sort of a thought partner and advisor, to being a funder or an investor in our public schools. We'll have networks of our public schools as well. There will be ways for them to get involved in this work. So there'll be a number of different ways folks will get involved as we develop the various actions. um, we'll take, if you submit your name, that into consideration to have you be part of an implementation team. But even if you're not ultimately selected for that, please know that we do want you to be involved in supporting this effort, both at the state level and in your local communities as well. So certainly appreciate the work that these two organizations have been doing for many, many years in supporting our public education system. But I do want to have a shout out to both the Public Schools First of North Carolina and North Carolina PTA for the great work that you have done, are doing, and I'm sure will be doing to support our public schools. I want to thank everybody this evening for being a champion of public education. And I'll open it up, let the folks open it up for Q&A at this point. So we'll go wherever folks want to go.
Yes, so Superintendent Green, we have a few questions. So we'll start with the first question. This person referenced having a conversation just today with an educator. And would you consider speaking about the impact of state health insurance on recruiting and retaining teachers?
Yeah, so I certainly think that the health benefits component is a critically important component to recruiting and retaining educators. And so North Carolina has been, blessed to have a reasonably good health care program, and certainly want to see that continue. Now, premiums, which have remained essentially flat for the last several years, are going up slightly depending on income. So the healthcare system, in order to be sure that it remains solvent, felt like it needed to, in addition to receiving additional resources from the General Assembly, also raise some premiums. And so, depending on the levels of income and the plan that is selected, you might see a slight increase in that. But I think that this is an important component to recruiting, and I would actually say retaining educators, right? Because oftentimes newer folks might look first at what is the salary, right? And let me just say, as an aside, we have got to do a lot of work to increase the compensation, particularly the salary for our educators. But certainly then, as people dig in deeper, they want to know, well, what kind of healthcare system support will we have? And that's where I do think we have a pretty good system in North Carolina for our educators and other state employees.
Thank you, Superintendent Green. When you mentioned the CTE credential number at the earlier part of your presentation, there is a question asking, was that cumulative, or does it reflect one particular year?
Yeah, so this is 1 year, but it is it is all students taking and earning credentials. So a student might earn more than one credential, right? But this is 1 year's worth of credentials being earned, which is pretty phenomenal.
Next question. Where specifically in this plan are you addressing the achievement gaps that are persistent amongst various student groups, minority students, students with disabilities, students with English as a second language, etc.?
Yeah, so you will find in the plan, in the measures, one of the things that we are doing is we're going to, first of all, be disaggregating the data which is the first step to show us exactly where there are differences in performance to where we want students to be, right? So that's the first step. And then underneath that, you will see various strategies, particularly in Pillar 1, that address subgroups of students. For example, focusing on, for example, English as a second language students, exceptional students as well. So there are strategies that are outlined in the various actions. Again, I didn't 110 actions. I didn't go through all of them. You can go through and see each of those things as you go through the plan as well.
Superintendent Green, where do you find, or where would you say, students who are not college bound, but maybe more interested in trades, where are they included in this plan?
Yeah, so they're absolutely included in the plan. And so this is where we have highlighted that, in fact, we are already second in the nation and we want to be first. And so part of the way we get to first in the nation is to be sure that there are more and more, number one, exposure to opportunities that we want to do in elementary and middle schools going into high school, and then opportunities expanding those opportunities when in high school. So you'll see various efforts that we'll be undertaking to be sure that there are more and more opportunities for students. Now, one thing I want to be real clear about, I don't want us to choose for students while they're going through the process of K-12 that they have to only do career and technical education, because oftentimes that is limiting to them, right? And it turns out that they might actually do well in a college course as well. And so that's where you heard me talk about, let's try to encourage more and more of our students to take both career and technical education courses and college courses as well. And then let them decide as they are finishing up high school what they want, where they want to go next.
Thank you, Superintendent Green. What is being planned for teaching digital literacy K-12?
Yeah, so we have, as I mentioned in Pillar 6, significant efforts around how we will work on transformative change. Some of these, and I should say, if you go into plan, you will see various actions. They're listed as right now sort of one sentence actions. So what will happen is, just to unpack it further, is there will be implementation plans that will be developed and to to really fill out what that action will actually be, right? And so there will be things that we will do with regards to digital literacy that you will find sort of one sentence in pillars 1 and 6 that we will be then doing much more robust actions around. And so as we unfold as we launch things, you will see more to come in this regard.
Thank you, Superintendent Green. The next question, you have tons. Are you familiar with restorative justice practices in schools? And if so, how do you see it playing a role in your plan?
Yeah, so very familiar with restorative justice activities, across, not only North Carolina, but in other places as well. Can be a very effective way for us to um, allow students to understand that maybe they have taken a inappropriate action, but a way to allow them to uh, continue to be educated in the traditional school environment while also acknowledging the harm that they may have caused, right? And so it's a very neat strategy. You'll see one of the things that we have included is, a measure. We want to absolutely reduce the number of violent acts that are occurring in our schools. It's actually, as a relative number, very small, but we know every violent act is one too many. And so we want to absolutely decrease those numbers. And so then with that measure, we will then have various strategies that we think will be helpful for districts to choose, public school units to choose. We're not going to say that everyone has to do restorative justice, but that would be an example of a way that a district might utilize to help meet the overall goals that we'll have around discipline.
Superintendent Green, you mentioned this earlier. Without legislative support, how can North Carolina increase teacher salaries? And what are the consequences of not raising salaries?
Yeah, so as opposed to any number of these initiatives, action items, if you will, where I believe that we can take existing dollars and reallocate dollars, or where we might be able to go to private entities, foundations to support the implementation of various initiatives. We can't do that with teacher compensation, with teacher pay. This is where the General Assembly really has to take the lead on it, because it's going to take tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to do the kind of substantial increase in teacher compensation that's necessary. So part of what we want to do in this plan and what's laid out is be sure that we are doing everything we can to appropriately advocate for those increases in pay. What happens if we don't get those increases in pay? Well, unfortunately, then we find ourselves doing what we have been doing to date, which is leaning on people in ways that I think is unfortunate to say, yes, but we still need you to do the wonderful work that you're doing. I don't think that's fair to our educators, right? That they're having to do that. And in fact, yeah, so people often talk about, well, are they earning the money that they're receiving? What's the return on investment for that increase in pay? If you go back to those best in nation measures, right, and recognize that pretty much in each of those measures, we're sort of middle or higher in the performance of our schools and students. The compensation, we are near the absolute bottom in what we pay our teachers. And so they already are having a wonderful return on investment. We're at a place where we have to pay our teachers more. That's ultimately going to be the General Assembly has to they have to take the lead on that. Certainly local communities might add a supplement on top of that. Many of them do. But the General Assembly, this is a place where they will have to step up.
Thank you, Superintendent Green. A couple of folks have asked about the current accountability model. And the question here, although the strategic plan addresses national academic measures, are there any implementation plans in the pillars to modify our current accountability model that would emphasize growth more so than proficiency on the EOG and EOC assessments?
Yes, ma'am. So actually, that's one of the actions we're launching that in October. So the state board will be identifying a task force that will focus on our school accountability system. And I would say that there are really two buckets of things that this task force will be called to do. Obviously, it will take a year plus to work through these two things, but there are two things, one of which is to focus on exactly what this person lifted up. How do we begin to change the balance between performance and growth? It's currently performance is 80% of a grade that's given to a school, and growth is 20%, which has resulted in so many schools being identified as low performing if you compare the number of low performing schools we have in North Carolina to other states, we we're so far away from where other states are. We have so many more, relatively speaking, that we know that that measure is actually not telling a appropriate story, and in fact is telling one that is actually, I think people are receiving it in a very negative manner. If we move the growth number up, we had done some analysis years ago. If it was like at 40% for growth, 60% for performance, we would have so many less schools that are identified as low performing. And we're still saying performance is most important, but growth is absolutely critically important as well. So that's the first bucket. The second bucket is for us to actually do a much deeper dive into thinking about, is this even the accountability system that we want going forward, right? You see the best in nation measures. There are many other things that we think are critically important to telling the story about our schools beyond just test scores, assessments that are given. If you think about high schools, for example, where there are 3 end of course exams essentially that are given. There are many more courses than 3. So to have a grade end up that you're a B high school on 3 courses over, when you think about all of the courses that are given, it doesn't do a really, it does actually a disservice to what's going on in that school. And so this is the second bucket is, let's look at it all and see if we want to come up with a new accountability system.
Yes, sir. I'm going to ask this last question and then I'm going to turn it over to Yvonne to ask a few others. Superintendent Green, how do you couch the current situation in Winston-Salem Forsyth with the strategic plan aimed at achieving educational excellence
Great.
and the
So,
retention of
and
teachers? Sorry.
it may be important to provide a bit of context. While I'm sure many folks do know about what's going on in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County schools, not many days pass where I find someone who does not. So, for the sake of folks who do not know, I'll just share in this way. This past year, school year, Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools ultimately found that it had was in it had overspent its resources by tens of millions of dollars, right? And the number that was shared as a result of an audit a report that was done by the state auditor was in the neighborhood of $46 million, right? And so as a result of that, they're having to figure out how to cover that deficit and also think about how to move forward this school year with a more balanced budget as well. And so what that has resulted in is substantial cuts to various positions in Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools, among other things, to try to cover that deficit. So that's a short version of that. And I should say, like, for example, the most recent cuts that they've made are actually to help with this year's budget, where they've made cuts of over 300 plus positions in the district. So how does that then fit into a broader achieving educational excellence? While I think there was certainly mismanagement of resources in Winston-Salem Forsyth County schools, it also is the case that it's operated in a situation where we are underfunding our public schools pretty dramatically, right? So if you compare North Carolina on the Educational Law Center research that they do annually, federal, state, and local dollars, North Carolina is somewhere around 48th to 49th in the country, depending on the year. And It's about 5,000 or so dollars less than the national average, but even 3 to 4,000 less than Virginia and South Carolina on a per pupil basis. If you times that times 1.5 million students, you can begin to see we are talking about real money. So that's another piece of that context. So how does this then fit into that? This is a way for, I believe, us to begin to have the kind of conversations we have to have across our state to really implement this plan successfully. So, as I've shared earlier, there are many things that we can do with existing resources, but we will need for certain things like teacher compensation, additional resources. Winston-Salem, then, how does it fit in it? It's in a moment. It certainly has to focus on dealing with its financial issues in this moment. Certainly, we're trying to find ways to be supportive of them as they work through these issues. But I don't want them to lose sight of what the ultimate goal is. And I would say this for those who say, "Well, Mo, you're not thinking about it." I was superintendent of Guilford County Schools right when the Great Recession hit. We, like every district in the state, had to return millions of dollars back to the state to balance the state's budget. And at the time that we did that, we launched our strategic plan in Guilford County Schools. And I said at that point, guys, let's not lose sight of what we must do, even as we're dealing with the moment that we're in, right? And so our students can't wait. It's not like we can tell our students sit tight in the fourth grade till we get this figured out in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County schools. And so even as you have to make adjustments, continue to remember what the ultimate goal is. So that's how we're trying to be supportive of Winston-Salem, Forsyth County schools, even as we are having to deal with a obviously very challenging moment in time for that school district.
Thank you, sir. Turning it over to Yvonne.
We had a few questions that were sent in to us, and we wanted to just see if we have just a little bit more time to ask these. One of the things that someone wants to know is what kind of support is your staff at DPI going to be able to provide to superintendents and principals and teachers to help them be a part of this plan?
Yeah, so it will obviously vary depending on who we're talking about, right? So, for example, with superintendents, I'll start with them. One of the things that we did is we actually engaged with the superintendents. So we put out a draft of the plan and asked for feedback before we went back to the state board and asked for its approval. One of the places we went to after we put out the draft is to our superintendents and said, what do you like? What do you don't like? What would you change, et cetera? How will we get buy-in from you, right? And so they provided a wealth of great feedback that helped us then put together what was ultimately approved. We're going back then now to our superintendents and say, now this is the plan. How do we help support you in the implementation of it? Got to be sure that they're fully aware of what's in it. And then we'll find ways to be supportive, and we'll be calling on them to actually help support the plan. So as an example, one of the ways that we'll engage them is through implementation networks. So this will be where we might say for a particular action, we want to have schools will say, I want to be part of working on this particular action. Chronic absenteeism as an example. Then we'll try to provide additional resources to those schools and school districts that are working on that particular action so that they can become then the proof point for other districts across the state. So that's just a way that we will be doing it. We actually met with and did the same thing with our chief academic officers, met with them last week, had them work through this so they can understand it, can start to figure out where they'll need support, and then we'll be to the extent that we can, be providing support to them as they then work on implementing various components of the plans as well. The same thing then will be true with principals and with teachers. Again, there will be various actions that are really aligned to be supportive of our teachers, and in turn, fully hope that they will then be supportive of the plan as well. As I gave as one example earlier around providing more time to teachers, there are some really good things happening already across the state. We think we can really develop more and more opportunities for teachers as we go forward. And so we'll be engaging our teachers in that. And then the last thing I'll just lift up is we'll be utilizing folks, superintendents, principals, teachers on being on our implementation teams. They'll bring important voices to the work that will be done.
So this question is kind of related to all that, but with a different focus. And it is like, what can parents, PTA leaders, civic organizations, nonprofits like Public Schools First, and other public education advocacy groups, what can these groups do? What's the best way they can support this plan?
Yeah, so you may recall that I had a slide that focused on signing up, if you will. And so you can go on and sign up. And what you will see over the coming months is there will ultimately be 5 different ways that will engage folks. So advocacy will certainly be one of the ways. But we'll also have opportunities for parents and nonprofits to be thought leaders. We'll have opportunities for folks to be service providers. So if there's something that a particular nonprofit does well, then we'll call on, and that service provider says, I'm willing to do X, then we'll call on them to do that. Now, with that one, we're going to be looking for folks to be able to do it for no cost or very minimal cost, right? Because we don't have the kind of additional resources to provide substantial compensation for some of these activities. And then we will be going to funders and investors and saying, this is an area that you focus on generally or have supported in the past. Or are you willing to do something pretty substantial in this area to help us really make the plan successful? So, and so you can then begin to see how folks can get involved in different ways, right? So depending on the particular action item, there will be part of what we'll do as part of each action item is we are asking our business owners, which are internal staff members, who will be the leads, to think through what do they need for that action to be successful. And they'll be able to say, well, I think we need to have some businesses to work on and support, for example, career development plans, right? That will cause us to say, okay, let's figure out how we get chambers, and chambers get business community members involved in supporting and being sure that folks know about various opportunities for careers in their community. So that's examples of how folks can get involved.
And so where is that link? Is there a link on the website? And it might be in the slides, and we will be providing the slides for everyone if that, is it okay with you, Superintendent Green? So
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So, yes, you can go to the DPI, North Carolina Department of Public Instruction website, NC DPI. At the top of the homepage, you will see something that's Achieving Educational Excellence. There's a place where you can click on to view the plan. And then when you click on that, you'll see the full plan. And then you'll also see ways you can also find links to then be able to click to become an advocate, a champion at this point. But we'll be putting more information as various of the actions are developed, then there'll be other opportunities for folks to show that they're interested in particular actions as well.
Okay, that is excellent. If there are no other burning questions, I'll kind of wrap it up with this last kind of a combined question, Superintendent.
Okay.
And everyone's kind of worried about the funding. Like they're saying this is a great plan, but we don't even have a budget this year. We have these threats of the federal education budget already becoming real. Um, you know, how is the inadequate funding levels that we have and are facing currently and may face in the future, how will this help hurt the plan moving forward, and what as advocates should we be doing about that?
Great. So I think that's a wonderful question. Certainly one that we can't overlook, right? And as I shared in response to some other questions, there are things that we think we will be able to do in realigning current resources. So for the moment, we're going to assume that we have fairly flat funding. Now, we know that maybe that isn't going to necessarily be true, particularly at the federal level, right? Which may impact, some of our ability to do certain things. But for the moment, we're sort of assuming generally flat funding. We know that there are resources that we can take from existing places and realign them to support strategic plan initiatives. There will be a significant effort for us to raise, private dollars to do some of these initiatives as well. As we build different types of partnerships and folks come to the table to do things. But I must say that for some things, it is going to take additional money, right? And so North Carolina is going to have to increase the kind of resources given to our public schools. There's no reason for us to be 3,000 to 4,000 less per child than even our neighbors in Virginia and South Carolina. There's no reason for that. And so we have to, I think, advocate for additional resources. You'll see in the plan that is actually one of the things that we are really stressing. We're focusing on teacher compensation, and then overall, we're saying we've got to have increases. But teacher compensation, we feel like, is one that we really can get folks, no matter sort of where they may be politically or otherwise, understand that that's a place of extreme need. And so we think we can develop lots of advocacy around teacher compensation efforts, as well as a broader increase in pay, increase in funding.
For people.
So the and so the plan itself isn't resting on us getting more money, or we can't wait, right? Because if we wait, what'll happen is one of the metrics that you saw is we're already losing enrollment. This enrollment issue will continue to spiral downward and downward if we don't take action as best as we can with the resources that we have. And you saw in that plan, we're going to also talk about how we're going to build champions and then galvanize champions. So we have got to do the work. As I say, we can't tell the fourth graders to stay in the fourth grade till we get more money. We can't do it. So we have to, even as we're advocating, and we must have, and I so appreciate the work that these two organizations have done to advocate for additional resources. But at the same time, we've got to take existing resources, realign them, move things forward in the meantime. So I don't want anyone to think, I guess the last thing I would say is I don't want anyone to say, well, let's just wait until we get more money. We've got to implement this plan as best we can with the resources that we have at this time.
Well, we're going to wrap it up now, Superintendent Green, because it's school night and everybody needs to get back to what they're doing. But I will say that one of the things I want to end on with that comment you made about funding is that everybody is really exciting. We got a lot of comments saying we were so happy to see the Mo Wants to Know tour. They were wanted me to say, congratulate the superintendent on doing what we've been asking for a long time, was just come and talk to us and listen to what we're saying. They're very thrilled to see components of conversations and meetings they've had with you show up in their strategic plan. And I want to encourage our guests tonight to do this. I want to encourage you to get a copy of this when you get your email. Share this slide deck with other folks. Send them to the website to sign up and encourage them to be involved. I secondly want to encourage you to get to know the information and the data. Superintendent Green tonight just mentioned what the teacher pay is, or what the per pupil spending is in other states. That is the kind of information that we make available on our website, in our fact sheets, in our newsletters. Please make sure you are getting that information, because it helps you become a better advocate, right? If you can say, I know what per pupil funding we are, I know what we rank in the nation with teacher pay, I see the exciting opportunities in this plan. And so arm yourself with some facts and some figures, and count on Public Schools First to do that for you. And here's all of our opportunities. We're on Facebook. You can get our newsletter, email us, ask us questions. We have an incredible director for research and communication. If she doesn't know the answer, she will find it. So if you need help with information, email us, info@ and get some help. And then before I turn this over for the last slide from our PTA president, I want to encourage you, join the PTA. Okay, I'm going to say that for her. Join the North Carolina PTA as a community supporter. It's very inexpensive, $25 a year, and you can be a part of the North Carolina PTA support group. Also, join your local PTA if you can. I don't have children in school anymore, Mr. Green, but guess what? I belong to 3 PTAs in my community because they're in my community. They're where my children went to school, and I want to continue to be a part of theirs. So get involved, join up with the superintendent, be one of his ambassadors, join the PTA, and get to know the facts and help us advocate. Okay, Shanika, I'm done.
Thank you, Yvonne.
Wrap us up.
You always take my plug to join the PTA, so I never have to say that. So just a few things. Again, thank you, Superintendent Green, for being with us this evening. We appreciate the continued visible partnership that we have with you and your office. Please join us at the 2025 NCPTA convention, where we have lots of fun things planned. Advocacy very high on our agenda, and we actually will have Public Schools First NC there doing a session and also doing a lunch and learn. And so we will be right in Raleigh at the McKimmon Center, October 10th, 11th, and 12th. So please look at our website to get great information. Also, National PTA grants are open until September 24th. So lots of us know that funding is definitely an issue that we want to uplift, but do know that National PTA has over $1 million in corporate grants that have been sponsored, and we need our PTAs in North Carolina to apply. The applications are very quick and easy. We are willing to help you. So please, please, please contact your PTA to make sure that they are submitting an application for everything and anything from mental health to STEAM, to vaping, tobacco, all kinds of things, family engagement activities. So highly encourage you to do that. And then we are always encouraging our schools to consider launching a reflections program. Our theme this year for reflections is I Belong. This allows students to create original pieces of work in dance choreography, film production, music composition, photography, and videography. And if you need help with that, we have our next session tomorrow night, which is September 18th. And make sure you have attended the required beginning of year training for all officers' chairs. It is a way to network with other leaders from across the state, hear more about how to advocate, which is what we know that Public Schools First NC and NCPTA and Superintendent Green are encouraging us to do as citizens of North Carolina. And if you ever need help, you can contact us at office@ncpta.org, president@ncpta.org, and of course, on our website, on Facebook, on Instagram, and that is all. Thank you so much for allowing us to share some important reminders and updates from NCPTA.
Again, good night to everyone. Thanks for coming and showing your support for our superintendent and this encouraging, exciting strategic plan. I told the superintendent earlier, we all need to be hopeful and positive and look for ways to make a difference in our children's lives. So yes, I agree. Don't wait. Get busy and let's all help him. Okay? Good night, everybody.
Yes. Good night.